Hello friends, I am Dr. Ashok Kumar Madhav here. Now in this session, classifying types of business organization is the theme. Now the objectives of this session is that at the end of this session, you should be able to explain the concept of business organization, define the characteristics of sole proprietorship, partnership, private company, limited companies, public limited and cooperative societies as such. Identify the merits of different types of businesses organization. Identify the limitations of different types of business organization. Dear friends, in this session, we will discuss about the concept and types of business organization. We shall also define the characteristics, merits, and limitations of different types of business organizations. Now, as a introductory part, as you already learnt about the meaning of business and the various types of business activities like industry, trade, transport, banking, insurance, etc. If you observe these business activities carefully, you will realize that whatever business activity one may take up, they need to bring together various resources like men, money, materials, machines, technology, etc. to carry out that activity successfully. Now, forms of business organization. A business organization usually falls in one of the following types in Indian condition as such. Number one, sole proprietorship. Number two, partnership. Number three, cooperative societies. Number four, private limited company. Number five, public limited company. Next, the choice of business organization depends upon key issues such as ability to raise finance, control of the business aims and objectives. Let us now learn in detail the exact nature of sole proprietorship, partnership, cooperative society, private and public limited companies. Let's begin with the sole proprietorship now. The term sole means single and proprietorship means ownership. So, only one person is the owner of the business organization. This means that a form of business organization which a single individual owns and manages the business, takes the profits and bears the losses is known as sole proprietorship form of business organization. Now, what are the characteristics of sole proprietorship? Now, to start with A, that is single ownership. The sole proprietorship form of business organization as a single owner who himself or herself starts a business by bringing together all the resources. No separation of ownership and management. The owner himself or herself manages the business as per his or own skill and intelligence. There is no separation of ownership and management as is the case with company form of business organization. Less legal formalities. The formation and operation of a sole proprietorship form of business organization does not involve any legal formalities. No separate entity. The business unit does not have any entity separate from the owner. The businessman and the business enterprise are one and the same, and the businessman is responsible for everything that happens in his business unit. No sharing of profit and loss. The sole proprietor enjoys the profits alone. At the same time, the entire loss is also borne by him. No other person is there to share the profits and losses of the business. Unlimited liability. The liability of the sole proprietor is unlimited. In case of loss, if his business assets are not enough to pay the business liabilities, his personal property can also be utilized to pay off the liabilities of the business as such. Next, it's one man control. The controlling power of the sole proprietorship business always remains with the owner. He or she runs the business as per his or her own will. Now, what are the merits of this system? Each type of business enterprise has its own merit. Some of the merits of the business type of sole proprietorship are: number one, easy to form and wind up. It is very easy and simple to form a sole proprietorship form of business organization. No legal formalities are required to be observed. Similarly, the business can be wind up any time if the proprietor so decides. Quick decision and prompt action. As stated earlier, nobody interferes in the affairs of the sole proprietary organization, so he or she can take quick decisions on the various issues relating to business, and accordingly prompt action can be taken. The next one is personal touch. Since the proprietor himself handles everything relating to business, it is easy to maintain a good personal contact with the customers and employees. By knowing the likes, dislikes, and tastes of the customers, the proprietor can adjust his operations accordingly. Now, what are the limitations of sole proprietorship? Each type of business activity has its own limitation and weaknesses, and some of these are: limited resources. The resources of a sole proprietor are always limited. Being the single owner, it is not always possible to arrange sufficient funds from his own sources. Lack of continuity. The continuity of the business is linked with the life of the proprietor. Illness, death, or insolvency of the proprietor can lead to closure of the business also. Thus, the continuity of business is uncertain. Unlimited liability. In the eyes of law, the proprietor and the business are one and the same. So, personal properties of the owner can also be used to meet the business obligations and debts as such. Unsuitable for large scale operations. It is not suitable for large scale business because the resources and managerial abilities are limited. Next is the limited managerial expertise. A sole proprietorship from form of business organization always suffer from lack of managerial expertise. A single person may not be an expert in all fields like purchasing, selling, financing, etc. as such. Next, we go to the concept of partnership. Now, partnership is an association of two or more persons who pool their financial and managerial resources and agree to carry on a business and share its profit. The persons who form a partnership are individually known as partners and collectively a firm or a partnership firm. Now, what are the characteristics of partnership firm? Based on the definition of partnership, the various characteristics of partnership form of business organization can be summarized as follows. Two or more persons. To form a partnership firm, at least two persons are required. The maximum limit on the number of persons is 10 for banking business and 20 for other businesses. If the number exceeds the above limit, the partnership becomes illegal and the relationship among them cannot be called partnership as such. Next is the contractual relationship. Partnership is created by an agreement among the persons who have agreed to join hands. Such persons must be competent to contract. Thus, minors, lunatics, and insolvent persons are not eligible to become the partners. Next, sharing profits and business. There must be an agreement among the partners to share the profits and losses of the business of the partnership firm. Next is the existence of lawful business. The business of which the persons have agreed to share the profit must be lawful. Any agreement to indulge in smuggling, black marketing, etc., cannot be called partnership business in the eyes of law. Principal agent relationship. There must be an agency relationship between the partners. Every partner is the principal as well as the agent of the firm. When a partner deals with other parties, he or she acts as an agent of other partners, and at the same time, the other partners become the principal as such. Next is the unlimited liability. The partners of the firm have unlimited liability. They are jointly as well as individually liable for the debts and obligations of the firms. If the assets of the firms are not sufficient to meet the firm's liabilities, the personal properties of the partners can also be utilized for this purpose. Voluntary registration. The registration of partnership firm is not compulsory, but an unregistered firm suffers from some limitations which make it virtually compulsory to be registered. Following are the limitations of an unregistered firm. The firm cannot sue outsiders, although the outsiders can sue it. In case of any dispute among the partners, it is not possible to settle the dispute through court of law. The firm cannot claim adjustments for amount payable to or receivable from any other parties. Now, what are the merits of this partnership? Each type of business enterprise has its own merit. Some of these are easy to form. A partnership can be formed easily without any legal formalities since it is not compulsory to get the firm registered. A simple agreement, either in oral, writing, or implied, is sufficient to create a partnership firm. Next is the availability of larger resources. Since two or more partners join hands to start partnership firm, it may be possible to pool more resources as compared to sole proprietorship form of business organization. Next is better decisions. In partnership firm, each partner has a right to take part in the management of the business. All major decisions are taken in consultation with and with the consent of all partners. Thus, collective wisdom prevails and there is less scope for reckless and hasty decisions. Protection of interest. In partnership form of business organization, the rights of each partner and his or her interests are fully protected. If a partner is dissatisfied with any decision, he can ask for dissolution of the firm or can withdraw from the partnership. Next is the question of secrecy. Business secrets of the firm are only known to the partners. It is not required to disclose any information to the outsiders. It is also not mandatory to publish the annual accounts of the firm. Next is the question of limitations. A partnership firm also has certain limitations. They are unlimited liability. The most important drawback of partnership firm is that the limited liability of the partners is unlimited. That is, the partners are personally liable for the debt and obligations of the firm. In other words, their personal property can also be utilized for payment of firm's liabilities. Next is the instability. Every partnership firm has uncertain life. The death, insolvency, incapacity, or the retirement of any partner brings the firm to an end. Not only that, any dissenting partner can give notice at any time for dissolution of partnership firm. Next is the question of limited capital. Since the total number of partners cannot exceed 20, the capacity to raise funds remains limited as compared to a joint stock company where there is no limit on the number of shareholders. The last one is possibility of conflicts. You know that in partnership firm, every partner has an equal right to participate in the management. Also, every partner can place his or her opinion or viewpoint before the management regarding any matter at any time. Because of this, sometimes there is friction and quarrel among the partners as such. Cooperatives, we go to that organization. The term cooperation is derived from the Latin word cooperare, where the word co means with and operare mean to work. Thus, the term cooperation means working together. So, those who want to work together with some common economic objectives can form a society which is termed as cooperative society. It is a voluntary association of persons who work together to promote their economic interests. It works on the principle of self-help and mutual help. The primary objective is to provide support to the members. People come forward as a group, pool their individual resources, utilize them in the best possible manner, and derive some common benefits out of it. Now, what are the characteristics of cooperative society here? Based on the above definition, we can identify the following characteristics of a cooperative society: form of business organization. What is that? Number one, voluntary association. Members join the cooperative society voluntarily, that is, by their own choice. Persons having common economic objective can join the society as and when they like, continue as long as they like, and leave the society and when they want. Next, open membership. The membership is open to all those having a common economic interest as such. Then, number of members. A minimum of 10 members are required to form a cooperative society. In case of multi-state cooperative societies, minimum number of members should be 50 from each state. In case the members are individuals, the Cooperative Society Act does not specify the maximum number of members for any cooperative society. However, after the formation of the society, the member may specify the maximum number of members. Next is the question of registration. In India, cooperative societies are registered under the Cooperative Societies Act of 1912 or under the State Cooperative Societies Act. The multi-state cooperative societies are registered under the Multi-State Cooperative Societies Act of 2002. Once registered, the society becomes a separate legal entity and attains certain characteristics. What are those characteristics? They are: the society enjoys perpetual succession, it has its own common seal, it can enter into agreements with others, it can sue others in a court of law, it can own properties in its name, state control. Since registration of cooperative societies is compulsory, every cooperative society comes under the control and supervision of the government. Every society has to get its accounts audited from the cooperative department of the government. Next is the question of capital. The capital of the cooperative society is contributed by its members. Since the members' contribution is very limited, it often depends on the loan from government and apex cooperative institutions or by way of grants and assistance from state and central governments. Next is the democratic setup. The cooperative societies are managed in a democratic manner. Every member has a right to take part in the management of the society. However, the society elects a managing committee for its effective management. The members of managing committee are elected on the basis of one man, one vote, irrespective of the number of shares held by any member. It is the general body of the society which lays down the broad framework within which the managing committee functions. Service motive. The primary objective of all cooperative societies is to provide services to its members. Return on capital investment. The members get return on their capital investment in the form of dividend. Distribution of surplus. After giving a limited dividend to the members of the society, the surplus profit is distributed in the form of bonus, keeping aside a certain percentage as reserve and for general welfare of the society. Next, what are the merits of this cooperative society? The cooperative society is the only form of business organization which gives utmost importance to its members rather than maximizing its own profits. After studying its characteristics and different types, we may now study the merits of this form of business organization. It's easy to form. Any 10 adult members can voluntarily form an association, get it registered with the Registrar of Cooperative Societies. The registration is very simple and it does not require much legal formalities as such. Next is the limited liability. The liability of the members of the cooperative societies is limited up to their capital contribution. They are not personally liable for the debt of the society. Open membership. Any competent, like-minded person can join the cooperative society anytime he likes. There is no restriction on the grounds of caste, creed, gender, color, etc. The time of entry and exit is also generally kept open. Next is the question of state assistance. The need for country's growth has necessitated the growth of the economic status of the weaker sections. Therefore, cooperative societies always get assistance in the forms of loans, grants, subsidies, etc., from the state as well as central government as such. Stable life. The cooperative society enjoys the benefit of perpetual succession. The death, resignation, insolvency of any member does not affect the existence of the society because of its separate legal entity. The merit of tax concession. To encourage people to form cooperative societies, the government generally provides tax concessions and exemptions which keeping on changing from time to time. Next is the question of democratic management. The cooperative societies are managed by the managing committee, which is elected by the members. The members decide their own rules and regulations within the limits set by the law as such. Now, what are the limitations of these cooperatives? Cooperative societies usually suffer from the following limitations. What is that? Limited capital. Most of the cooperative societies suffer from lack of capital since the members of the society come from a limited area or class and usually have limited means. It is not possible to collect huge capital from them. Again, government's assistance is often inadequate for them. Lack of managerial expertise. The managing committee of a cooperative society is not always able to manage the society in an effective and efficient way due to lack of managerial expertise. Again, due to lack of funds, they are also not able to derive the benefits of professional management. Less motivation. Since the rate of return on capital investment is less, the members do not always feel involved in the affairs of the society. Lack of interest. Once the first wave of enthusiasm to start and run the business is exhausted, intrigue and factionalism arise among members. This makes the cooperative lifeless and inactive. Corruption. In spite of government's regulation and periodical audit of the accounts of this cooperative society, the corrupt practices in the management cannot be completely ignored as such. Private limited companies. Now we go to the part of private limited companies. These are closely held businesses, usually by family, friends, and relatives. Private companies may issue stock and have shareholders. However, their shares do not trade on public exchanges and are not issued through an initial public offering. Shareholders may not be able to sell their shares without the agreement of the other shareholders. What are the advantages of this? Limited liability. It means that if the company experiences financial distress because of normal business activity, the personal assets of shareholders will not be at risk of being seized by creditors. Continuity of existence. Business not affected by the status of the owner. Minimum number of shareholders need to start the business or only two. More capital can be raised as the maximum number of shareholders allowed is 50. Scope of expansion is higher because easy to raise capital from financial institutions and the advantage of limited liability. What are the disadvantages? Growth may be limited because maximum shareholders allowed are only 50. The shares in a private limited company cannot be sold or transferred to anyone else without the agreement of other shareholders. Public limited companies is the another form of organization which we want to discuss now. Limited companies which can sell share on the stock exchange are public limited companies. These companies usually write PLC, that is public limited company, after their names. What are the advantages? Some of the advantages of the public limited companies are there is limited liability for the shareholders. the business has separate legal entity, there is continuity even if any one of the shareholders die. These businesses can raise large capital sum as there is no limit to the number of shareholders. The shares of the business are freely transferable, providing more liquidity to its shareholders. Now, what are the disadvantages of this company? Some of the disadvantages of the public limited companies are there are a lot of legal formalities required for forming a public limited company. It is costly and time consuming. In order to protect the interest of the ordinary investor, there are strict controls and regulations to comply. These companies have to publish their accounts. The original owners may lose control. This is another disadvantage. Public limited companies are huge in and may face management problems such as slow decision making and industrial relations problems. Conclusion. In this session, we discussed about the concept and types of business organizations. We also defined the characteristics, merits, and limitations of different types of businesses organization. The formation of sole proprietorship form of business organization does not require any specific legal formalities except where permission of the local authority is required to be obtained. In partnership, simple agreement is enough to start a business. The registration of the firm is also not compulsory. A cooperative society follows the provisions of the Cooperative Societies Act for its registration. It is mandatory for each society to be registered with the registrar of the cooperative societies. After the registration, the society becomes a body corporate with separate legal entity and enjoys perpetual succession. The difference between private and public limited companies is in the number of shareholders and transferability of shares. In private limited companies, the minimum number of shareholders is 2 and maximum is 50, excluding the past and the present employees who hold the shares. Whereas in public limited companies, the minimum number of shareholders is 7 and there is no maximum limit. In the case of public limited company, the shares are freely transferable, but it is not so in case of a private limited company. Some of the stringent requirements which are applicable to public limited companies are not there in the case of private limited companies. Now, public sector company is a company where the central government or state government or both of them combined together holds the majority of the shares, but in private sector companies, the private individuals or business houses holds the majority of shares. Thank you very much for patient hearing.